At 114.5 meters high, the ArcelorMittal orbit very strongly resembles the key Mithraic figurine known as the Leontocephalus, the lion-headed. Another name for this is Arimanos, and as we have mentioned already, in ancient Persia's Zoroastrianism, Arimanos is the demonic equivalent of Satan. So the question is, why reference such a fearsome pagan deity to over 900 million people worldwide? What if there was an ancient cult so powerful, but so hidden, elements of it can be found in every aspect of the modern world, but still go unnoticed to the majority of the planet? From a major 1952 discovery in the United Kingdom to the 2017 unearthing of a temple in Turkey, evidence of such a cult devoted to a 6,000-year-old Persian deity called Mithra, a sun god, has been found across the globe. Born out of Zoroastrianism, some believe that this ancient god may not have only infected the direction of every major religion from our ancient past, but has the potential to jeopardize the entire planet's future.
The International Olympic Committee has the honor of announcing that the Games of the 30th Olympiad in 2012 are awarded to the city of London.
What is the importance of symbolism? In 2012, the Olympics was opened in London, England, in front of an estimated global audience of 900 million people. One of the most interesting aspects about this ceremony was the esoteric symbolism displayed throughout. This was a blend of dark occult, Zoroastrian, and Mithraic influences only people familiar with Rome and the pre-Islamic Middle East could recognize. What exactly Mithraism is will be explained later, but for now, let's just say that even beyond the 2012 Games, it is something symbolically presented throughout modern culture, while also potentially being antagonistic to it. Symbols and iconography from this cult are present throughout the modern world, but rarely draws attention to itself. Historians will admit that not much is actually known about it. However, significance to its theology and purpose have been found over the past 60 years.
London, in the heart of the city near the Mansion House, an ancient Roman temple dating back to the 2nd century AD has been unearthed, the first of its kind ever discovered in the capital.
In September of 1954, ruins of a mid-3rd century temple was first uncovered in London's Victoria Street that was initially understood to be merely of Roman origins, but soon confirmed to be a temple to the sun god Mithras. Throughout history, similar discoveries have been made on the island of Corsica, France, Turkey, and in other places. In Turkey, the 1800-year-old Roman-era temple dedicated to Mithras was discovered on the Zerzafan Castle in the southeastern province of Diyarbakir. This site is well preserved and is believed to have been designed according to the movements of the solar system. Writing for Turkey's Aval News, journalist Deniz Tekin says that there is even a belief that this temple has its own magnetic field, and this location, perhaps along with other Mithraic temples, contains doors to other universes. We will get into the more anomalous attributes of these locations later, but for now, let's briefly describe what Mithraism is and why these ancient finds are important to the modern age.
Statue on the left looks identical to the Statue of Liberty. It is the sun god that presides over the world.
Traditionally, seen as both a precursor and an evolution of Zoroastrianism, Mithraism is essentially a Roman cult surrounding Mithras, a god whom originally appeared in the 1st century AD and was frequently connected with the sun god Sol. Despite being worshipped by some Romans, he is usually depicted as a man dressed in Persian clothing, slaughtering a bull in a cave. While a growing number of academics argue that the Roman cult of Mithras first appeared in late 1st century Italy, with its Persian elements only added in afterwards by the Romans to make their cult seem more oriental. Many historians still agree that Mithras worship actually began far earlier in ancient Iran, where he was known as Mithra. Although not much is known about this cult, it is understood to be polytheistic in nature, with elements of it in Hinduism and ancient Chinese belief. Prior to Zarathustra's rise to power, the founder of Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persians also had polytheistic religious beliefs consistent with Mithraism. However, with Zoroastrianism came a belief in one god across Persia. Although Darius the Great and the subsequent Persian kings of the Achaemenid dynasty essentially adapted this monotheistic faith as their state religion, in order to avoid social difficulties, they also tolerated the polytheistic belief that were still ingrained throughout the region. Consequently, the religion of Zoroastrianism was gradually contaminated with polytheistic elements in worship, such as Mithraism, hence why the two faiths are often linked together. Today, the influence of Zoroastrianism on modern culture is evident, because elements of its DNA can be found in or adjacent to all of the world's major religions, including Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Consequently, elements of Mithraism can also be found in these faiths.
It was Mithraism, and that sun symbol of Mithraism spills over today in things like wedding rings, which are a band symbolizing the corona of the sun, and the halo that angels and saints and Jesus and people like that had halos or coronas of the sun. This is just incidental carryovers from Mithraism.
Although many theologians shy away from directly discussing Zoroastrianism's connection to their faiths, Islamic scholars have not only acknowledged the similarities between it and the Abrahamic belief system, but also that Zarathustra may have even been one of the many Abrahamic prophets who came from God to guide mankind. However, they believe that over time, his teachings became corrupted and paganized. The Zoroastrians are even mentioned in the Quran, where they're even referred to as the pagan Magians or fire worshippers. Before Islam, when a direct clash of beliefs between early Christians and the Romans saw a blurring of religious doctrine take place between the two, it would appear that elements of Mithraism became embedded within Christianity, at least according to academics like Professor Luther H. Martin from the University of Vermont in the United States. Ever wondered why some Middle Eastern Christians celebrate Christmas in the first week of January and not in December? Including the Christians of Ethiopia, Armenia, and Egypt's Copts, who by the way are one of the oldest Christian communities in the world. Well, academics and historians say that when Mithraism reached the height of popularity in the early 3rd century AD, Christianity was also growing rapidly, causing an ideological conflict in Rome. However, the Roman emperors Aurelian had already made Mithraism the official state religion in 274 AD, with their god known as Sol Invictus, meaning the victorious sun, the symbolic protector of the empire. While the Sol Invictus celebration held on December 21st marks the anniversary of Mithra's birth, it is also the shortest day and the longest night of the year, which is the winter solstice, symbolizing rebirth. In Zoroastrianism, darkness is the domain of the Ahrimanos, the destructive spirit, and the light comes from Ahura Mazda, the highest spirit symbolizing the state. Now remember the name Ahrimanos, because this demon will become important in the second half of this episode. Some historians theorize that this close proximity between the Mithraic and Christmas dates concerning the birth of godlike entities was a deliberate move by the Romans to weaken Mithraism's influence in the empire by pacifying its followers via the incorporation of their belief into Christianity. It's important to note that the same was done by the early Persian kings to keep the followers of Mithra pacified during the age of Zoroastrianism, However, for some Christian communities outside of the direct rule of the Roman Empire, this connection to Mithraism was irrelevant to them, and thus those December dates were never accepted. This is why they continue to celebrate Christmas Day in the first week of January. Similarly, Faridun Vahman, an Iranian academic, notes that even in Islamic countries, Mithraic elements can be found, although here they still remain separate from Islam itself. For example, Yeldashab is a major Persian festival celebrating the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. Other aspects of Mithraism hidden in plain sight includes tarot cards, with its cosmology based on the 7 planets of the Mithraic cult, the swastika from the Hindu religion, which was later appropriated by Germany in the 1930s, and according to some historians, even the famous caduceus medical sign, a symbol which is also associated with ancient Masonic rites, leading us back to the symbolism found at the 2012 Olympics. Mithraism's influence on the Zoroastrian faith and then Christendom via social political necessity in a strikingly similar manner may seem coincidental. However, some fringe theorists state that this is a part of a deliberate plot spanning an entire millennia. In a 2012 article written shortly after the opening of the Olympic Games, the lecturer and filmmaker David Wilcock accused the organizers of the ceremony for incorporating too much esoteric mysticism into the Olympics, labeling the ceremony as a large-scale Kabbalistic ritual. He focuses his attention on the various Mithraic and Zoroastrian symbolism present in the event, primarily highlighting the Arcellar Metal Orbit, which was at the time the tallest sculpture in the entire United Kingdom. At 114.5 meters high, the Arcellar Metal Orbit very strongly resembles the key Mithraic figurine known as the Leontocephalus, the lion-headed. He states that another name for this is Arimanos, and as we have mentioned already, in ancient Persia's Zoroastrianism, Arimanos is the demonic equivalent of Satan. Some of the found surviving images of the Leontocephalus are even sculpted with cloven hooves for feet. So the question is, why reference such a fearsome pagan deity to over 900 million people worldwide? Consistent with the bizarre esoteric imagery evoked at the Olympics, the somewhat problematic author David Livingston argues that there is a direct bloodline between the cult of Mithras and powerful modern-day occult organizations that are allegedly running the planet. Here, he states an unlikely theory concerning the origins of these Kabbalistic societies by stating that the turn of the first millennium BC, a network of influential Middle Eastern families from Persia, Armenia, and Egypt intentionally used Mithraism as an ideological weapon to not only corrupt the notion of the one-god belief system found in Zoroastrianism, but to also later infect Christian ideology in a similar way by injecting a number of numerous Mithraic motifs into its doctrine via the Romans. When Islam rose to prominence, this cult then proceeded to infiltrate that religion, albeit at a very late stage and limited capacity, to create an early version of the Illuminati. The ancient Middle Eastern families and societies associated with the Mithraic cult are said to include the House of Commagene, an ancient Greco-Iranian kingdom from the Iranian Orontid dynasty, the family of Herod the Great from pre-Islamic Palestine, the Syrian priest kings of Baal, all of whom were connected to the family of Rome's Julius Caesar, giving them a political leverage across North Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. So ultimately, what does this all mean? Well, let's put all the pieces together. First, we have the discovery of the Mithraic temples unearthed around the Middle East and Europe, hinting to a seemingly important and highly influential mystery cult that not much is really known about. Secondly, we have an alleged network of powerful Middle Eastern families and their connection to Rome using Mithraism as a tool to infiltrate and in some cases corrupt every major religion on the planet with ideological principles that sometimes go against their core values. Thirdly, elements of this cult randomly shows up in various different aspects of the modern world, often hidden in plain sight via a range of occult symbology. And finally, the followers of this ancient cult allegedly eventually evolved into modern-day secret cabals, organizations so powerful they even hold an influence over major world events like the Olympic Games. These elements are linked to the concept of Ad-Dajjal al-Masih, an extremely dangerous, powerful, and an anomalous human who will become a political figure and herald for the end of days. According to Islamic theology and various religious schools of thought from other religions, before his arrival, clues of his birth and the system he needs to establish his rule on earth will be seeded throughout modern and ancient history. His signs would be simultaneously promoted, yet hidden in plain sight, almost everywhere. In English, Ad-Dajjal al-Masih means the Antichrist. And on that cliffhanger, that's where we will end this episode. So what do you think? Is this just merely entertainment with not much weight to it? Or could there really be a sinister truth to it all? Comment below and let's discuss. In a future episode, we will dig deeper into Zoroastrianism, its demonology, and possible links to recent archaeological finds concerning the ancient world's fear of very real monsters and jinn. We would like to thank all of you who subscribe to this channel, and especially to those on Patreon. Given the unstable nature of this platform, the goal is to take this to Netflix levels of production. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe and smash that like button. Until then, see you in the next one.